What's up everyone, Darcblade back with my Mass Effect 3 multiplayer class guide. Today we are going to be taking a look at our first DLC character, the Asari Justicar. The Asari Justicar is a very heavily team-based character, both for defensive team play and offensive team play. This is all thanks to the character's unique ability, Biotic Sphere. Now as always, I spec my characters for gold and silver mode. The Asari Justicar, like I said, is all reliant on the Biotic Sphere. It's a unique move to the class, so you might as well get the most out of it. I'll go into the details about it a bit more in a minute, but at the moment I take warp effect, damage reduction, and radius. The second ability the Asari Justicar has is Reeve, a nice damage over time effect that also puts a debuff on the targets and a buff on yourself. I would like to know, I would preferably like to change the spec here into damage and duration rather than armor and barriers. The third ability is Pour. I've only put a few points in here so I'm able to set up my own biotic explosions from range. As for Asari Justicar and fitness, again these are down to personal preference. I like to max out fitness with my Asari Justicar, as well as putting points into increasing your power damage. As for weaponry, Asari Justicar is a class not hindered by using certain weapons. I still feel they're best with either a pistol or submachine gun, but they can be perfectly as good using an assault rifle. They actually have a weight reduction for assault rifles at the end of their Asari Justicar tree. Anyway, let's get into the Asari Justicar's main powers and abilities. Firstly, its unique power, Biotic Sphere. Basically, this is a bubble, a sphere bubble, that the Asari Justicar creates around her. Take note that setting up the Biotic Sphere is not an instant cast ability. It takes the Asari Justicar a second to actually set it up. If you dodge out the way before the cast animation is finished, then the Biotic Sphere will not be cast correctly and you'll have to do it again. Now the Biotic Sphere has two basic uses, three if you spec into warp effect. The first is the defensive bubble. Teammates standing inside your Biotic Sphere will take less damage from enemy fire, all sources basically. The second is it increases damage to opponents that are standing in the sphere. This is for both you and your teammates. And the third use, which is more of a personal use, is the warp effect. Basically, when opponents walk into your Biotic Sphere, they will be affected as if they've been hit with warp. Being hit by warp, of course, gives you a slight damage over time, but more importantly, it can be used to set up biotic explosions. The only downside of warp effect is that it can only affect up to 3 enemies who are actually standing in the sphere at once. A tactic I use with the warp effect Biotic Sphere is to target different people after the explosions have been activated by your Reeve. For example, if you target one person with Reeve who is in the Biotic Sphere that has been affected with the warp effect, follow it up by targeting the second person, and then follow that up with the third person. This way you can get a string of continuous biotic explosions going. The warp effect and the ability to increase damage targets take makes the Biotic Sphere a great trap move. So for example, if you put the Biotic Sphere in a choke point, then enemies walking into it will take a lot more damage than they normally would, as well as being set up for biotic explosions. Using the Biotic Sphere as a trap seems to work better on smaller levels or levels that are based inside buildings. This Biotic Sphere trap tactic seems to work better on smaller levels or levels that are contained inside buildings rather than out in the open. The second tactic for the Biotic Sphere is as a defensive position. If you have a good defensive position that you and your team are using, then it's wise to use the Biotic Sphere to protect you and your teammates. Try to get as many teammates as you can inside the Biotic Sphere. That's why I take increased radius in the Biotic Sphere tree. Of course, you can augment your offensive and defensive abilities by editing the Biotic Sphere tree. You can make it so your teammates take less damage while standing in the sphere, or you can make it so opponents take more damage while standing in the sphere. At the end of the day, no matter how you use the Biotic Sphere, whether it's as a defensive position enhancer or as a trap mechanism, it's still a great team move. Now the second ability the Asari Justicar has is Reeve. I covered Reeve mostly in my Drell Adept video. Reeve is a great damage over time move. It is also a great way to set up and activate biotic explosions. It also comes with a debuff ability that you can put on enemy targets. It makes their resistances weaker and disrupts their health. It's also very useful against barriers and armor. It also has a buff effect on the person casting it as well. It increases their defenses so they take less damage. Reeve is a really nice move. If you have a quick recharge timer, you can use Reeve quite often to put multiple dots on multiple opponents. If you have more biotics in your team, you can use Reeve to really easily set up biotic combos. This is because Reeve is an instant cast ability, so you can put the biotic setup on opponents really fast. If you're in a team, however, that you are the only biotic, then you have to rely on a different tactic. This is where the Asari Justicar's third ability comes into line, which is called Pull. Reeve can't be activated with Pull, so you have to use the ability Pull to set up biotic explosions. Unless, of course, you have the warp effect on your biotic sphere and the target walks into it. The bad thing about Pull is that it doesn't affect targets with shields, barriers and armor. So that's already taken out half the enemies you can actually use Pull against. The targets that are affected by Pull will be suspended in the air, taking them out of the action. This gives the Asari Justicar and Pull a kind of crowd control move on lesser opponents. Apart from these reasons, Pull is not an ability you should really take above Biotic Sphere and Reeve. One tactic with Pull would be to reduce an enemy's shield or barrier with weapon fire, then use Pull. Follow it up with your Reeve to activate a biotic explosion, or get a teammate to activate the Pull biotic explosion. As for the Asari Justicar tree, I personally go for max power damage. I also go to try to reduce the weight of my weapons as much as possible, because having a quick recharge timer is really useful. It allows you to apply Reeve to multiple opponents. It also allows you to do the Pull Reeve biotic explosion combo if you come across a target that can be affected with Pull. As for fitness, I take max health and max shields, or barrier in the Asari Justicar's case. The Asari Justicar tends to have a slightly higher barrier than the other two Asari races, those being the Asari Adept and Asari Vanguard. I don't feel that there's any point in putting points into the increased melee, simply because in the higher difficulties you are not given many opportunities to melee enemies. As for weapons, like I said, a good pistol or submachine gun, or if you favour the assault rifle, are probably optimal for the Asari Justicar. With the right points in the Asari Justicar passive tree, you can make the weight of assault rifles less. This all being said, I still try to get a fairly quick recharge timer. You don't necessarily have to go for the 200% recharge timer, as you're not spamming your abilities constantly like the Asari Adept, but it is still good to be able to spam Reeve as much as possible. The Asari as a race are quite a nimble race. They have a good biotic dash dodge, which is probably the fastest in the game. However, unfortunately, it does take away a little bit of your barrier every time you do use this biotic dash dodge. The Asari's normal melee is nothing special, but their heavy melee is a nice biotic blast. This is an AoE melee basically, hitting anyone around the Asari. The Asari have fairly similar health, shields and barriers to humans out there. The Asari Justicar can potentially though have more barrier than normal. So, overall, the Asari Justicar is an amazing character, a great team player of a character, useful for anyone tackling any difficulties as long as there's teamwork involved. Biotic Sphere and Reeve make this a very good class for tackling gold mode and a very good class overall. Anyway, I've been Darcblade, bringing you my guide to the Asari Justicar. Hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching, subscribe and like for more.